Cashless gambling. It's no longer a new concept, and some think it could soon replace gambling with paper money altogether. But is it all moving too fast too soon? One recently unveiled concept has gamblers able to connect their bank accounts directly to slot machines via a QR code. Yikes! So today on CityCast Las Vegas, we have two industry experts, former MGM executive and current UNLV faculty member Alan Feldman and prominent gaming consultant Josh Swissman, to explain the innovation and answer concerns about how this may touch on the darkest side of gambling. It's Thursday, October 30th. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Alan, welcome back to CityCast Las Vegas.
Thanks, David.
And Josh, thanks for coming on for the first time.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, gents, hooking up slot machines directly to people's checking accounts. What could possibly go wrong? Alan, you want to start us out?
Well, I mean, there are a number of things, baked into that can go wrong, and there are a number of things that can go right. I think it really depends. And I don't mean to take away your special skill as a lawyer to say it depends, but I think it does. I don't think it's going to be the same for any single group other than people who are having problems with their gambling currently. And if they are, this will absolutely hasten the decline.
Josh, we told the CEO of our company that this was going to be the topic, and he freaked out. He's like, that's the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard. I mean, do you get where he's coming from?
I can understand where he's coming from, and I can understand where, when you think about it on first blush, it sounds like a really slippery slope. We were having these same conversations 30 years ago, though, when we talked about doing away with coin hoppers and spitting out tickets out of slot machines instead of the lovely clang and the dirty fingers that we all used to experience playing on the slot floors of yesteryear. I know.
Yeah, you can never give away where you were, right? I mean, you always gave away where you were, right?
That's right. That's right. You had the dirty fingers to prove it, and it took more than one hand washing to get rid of that whatever that residue was on those quarters.
And people collected those coin buckets and reused them for everything from, holding buttons to pens. Yeah, it's really, hopefully not to drink out of.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I don't think that you could ignore the historic drive toward this. And you're seeing it everywhere. I haven't used cash at a Starbucks in, I couldn't even tell you how many years. I barely care. In fact, right now I have zero on me because I have other ways to pay. And in fact, you can already, for any number of purchases, tie your checking account simply by putting your debit card into your wallet. So this is the confluence of several decades of consumers, kind of voting with their feet, if you will, wanting to have less and less friction, wanting to wait shorter times, up to and including a matter of seconds, before they have access either to make a purchase or a transaction, or in this specific case, to gamble.
Maybe one of you should go through the distinction between what, is generically called cashless gambling and this newer innovation, I'd imagine, QR code-based gambling.
Sure. I'll take a stab at it now, and feel free to jump in. This very low friction form of cashless gambling, as I understand it, is a direct connection to the slot, what's called the coin meter at a particular slot machine, where you scan this QR code and you are able to seamlessly take money out of your checking account and transmit it to the slot machine, shows up in the coin meter, and that's really it in terms of number of steps. Historically, with cashless gaming, you either had to have a loyalty account with the casino, and then you had a separate wagering account that was attached to that loyalty account. You then had to take money from your checking account, transfer it into your wagering account, and then from your wagering account to the gaming device. It was really kind of a bit of a clunky process by, say, Starbucks standards.
Yeah.
So this does attempt to eliminate a lot of the friction tied to that more traditional cashless gaming experience. Of course, there are other versions of that where you still had these intermediary accounts. Perhaps you didn't have to create an account with the loyalty program for the casino, but it was this multi-step process.
Yeah, and I understand the multi-step. I think there were some cashless gambling programs out there where you would apply for a credit, like a marker, more or less, and you'd hook up your personal checking account, and then you could draw upon it, and then obviously after whatever amount of time agreed upon goes by, it would just come out of your bank account. So this is a little bit more direct. You keep using the word lack of friction, and Alan, you and I have had lots of conversations about responsible gambling, and I think it's pretty commonly understood that friction is good for a lot of people. In other words, the take a break from the enticement, if you will. Some might call it the zombification of gambling, that you need to break away, like going to the bathroom, or think about what you're doing and where you are. So it is lack of friction. I get it's good for the casinos. Is it good for the players?
Well, I think it's something we're going to have to pay attention to and study. I don't know that the friction has necessarily made a difference. And depending on what measurement you want to use, and I appreciate that prevalence studies tend to vary widely in their methodology, it's just interesting that they continuously come up with the same results all over the world. And it hasn't changed in 30 years. So I'm not so certain that what we believe is a quote-unquote responsible gaming strategy is effective. It really needs to be studied on a much, much larger scale. And I know I'm going to end up sounding like, the academic who wants more money to do research. But
yeah.
The reality is, when you look at a lot of studies on gambling, they're talking to very, very, very few people. And those very few people may have characteristics in common just based on how they were recruited. We don't have in the gambling sphere studies that talk to 1 million people or 2 million people. Frankly, 10,000 would be an extraordinary number in this field. So this is the kind of thing that I think we've got to pay close attention to. I appreciate the concern. I don't disagree about the concern. But the reality also is, even with all those friction points, what is the policy that's going to actually prevent someone from doing this? To me, I feel as though it needs to start long before you get to a casino. There needs to be much better education, just generally about finance, to say nothing of the finance of gambling. And so, yeah, these products left in the current environment where we teach young people nothing about the risks of gambling. We're not even teaching young people.
It's not right after sex ed at any local school. That's for sure. Although in a community like ours, some argue it should. I mean, Josh, you wanted to jump in here?
I agree with what Alan's saying. I suppose I think about it from a different angle as well. I mentioned the data side of things earlier. You have to understand that with this added technology comes a whole lot of extra data and a whole lot of functionality that is at the both at the operators as well as the players' fingertips to intervene before you're in the heat of the moment, if you'd like, and set limits, set reminders, set these triggers to introduce. I'll use the same term, right? Introduce friction to serve as that kind of snap to, and the elimination of that zombification that you talk about, David. I think we're just getting started as an industry when it comes to really harnessing the power that this additional data and additional functionality will have, not only in terms of research and understanding at a really sort of a micro-transactional level what does or doesn't trigger problem gambling behaviors or how to identify it, but also in a real world sense from an operator that wants to look after their customers and perhaps figure out when the right time to intervene or say something or communicate might be, or from a player's standpoint in terms of figuring out when the right time is to take a break. there are more options now than there have been in decades, and a lot of that has been triggered by the advent and the evolution of cashless gaming.
Yeah, well, I mean, sure, we always hypothetically hope that the benevolent capitalist overlords will utilize all the data that they're receiving for us in ways that benefit the consumers and not exploit them. But look, whenever we're dealing with a new technology, and Alan, I appreciate the Starbucks analogy, but, there's only so deep you can go in lattes versus what you can do at, 100 hand poker machine.
No, absolutely.
But we do talk about safeguards, right, in these contexts. So, I am really interested in what safeguards for this sort of QR code technology are being discussed and implemented, and how we ultimately know if they're safe enough for the average consumer.
Well, I can answer the second question. We're not going to know about safety for the average consumer for anybody unless we study it. And Josh probably knows the first part of that better than I would in terms of what these companies are doing to incorporate safeguards.
Yeah, Josh, what are safeguards that we're talking about, at least?
Sure. And this is an evolving sort of topic, but I can tell you what is steadfast is the focus of these technology and banking and player system providers, in that they know that there's an opportunity here to hopefully augment the responsible gambling experience and problem gambling identification process. But also, at the same time, don't create such a burdensome process for the gambling public at large, where we end up taking one step forward and two steps back in terms of overall customer experience. Right. In my mind, it's a balanced approach.
I think what you're saying is that, look, we're a gambling legal state. We depend on gambling. We want customers to have a great, easy experience where they don't have to get up and stop if they don't want to. But we also do have to be mindful of how these patterns develop and put in ways that aren't just theoretical, but are actually implemented to either slow people's play or have an actual intervention.
But the challenge of it is that we really haven't had the kind of data that we have access to now. I think Josh is exactly right. The amount of technology that has happened in this industry in the last 5 years is probably greater than the 40 years or 50 years before it. And as a result, when I say we, I mean as a community, we are sitting on a massive amount of data. Now, the gaming industry, specifically the casinos and the online operators, they don't have all of it. They don't have banking data. They're not able to look and see what's happening in your accounts and elsewhere in your life. That is an unbelievably large black hole in this discussion.
But it also begs the question now, and maybe Josh, you could answer this. I mean, giving that very sensitive data over to casino operators, where are the safeguards there that they're only using it for benevolent reasons?
Well, first of all, I think, with regard to benevolent reasons, all these gaming institutions hold privileged licenses that they value quite dearly. In fact, they couldn't exist without them. So
yeah,
I think that the likelihood that something
nefarious
is going on, good word choice, is a little bit of a stretch. With regard to security and data privacy and all of those other broader concerns, again, these casinos live and die by their player databases and the integrity of their organization, both from a technological infrastructure as well as from a fairness of the game standpoint. And so,
we can't have rigged games like what we're seeing out of New York, where the machines are basically reading everyone's minds before they even know what they're doing. So there's definitely regulation.
That's right.
Another thing to keep in mind, David, there isn't a single gambling company, legitimate, licensed gambling company, that wants to drive a customer into a dark space. That doesn't help. You're basically destroying a customer.
Well, I mean, if they get emptied out, they're not much of a good
No,
customer anymore. Anyway.
Yeah, but the point is that the basic measure of customers is their lifetime value, right? And that presumes that you're going to have 20 or 30 years of a relationship with this individual. If you blow through that in 6 months, you've just taken someone off the list. And that makes no sense. Their lifetime value after that 6 months is zero. So I don't think that there's a lot of incentive in real terms to do what you're talking about. What they are incentivized, and any merchant is incentivized to get the maximum share of wallet. That's true. Of the amount of money that you spend going to the movies, each of those companies want to be certain that you're going to their theater. And they will give you loyalty, and they will give you free popcorn, and they want you coming. And I know it's not an exact comparison, because obviously in gambling, this can become a much, much more serious problem. But the same is true of Macy's and Nordstrom and Saks and Neiman and anyone else in the retail business. Of all that you spend on whatever they sell, they want the largest share for themselves.
All right, I think we're being, balanced here, but maybe as a summary, what are the upsides and the downsides of cashless gambling and QR code gambling for Las Vegas?
Well, I certainly think that the more the experience feels like it's on the cutting edge, that's part of what makes Vegas special, is that we've got constant change and we keep innovating to make the experience better. And really, in that regard, we're no different than companies that now use your hotel companies will use your phone as a key to make that process easier. Like it was all that impossible to go get a key at the front desk. But everywhere you look in the retail and entertainment experience, we're looking to make it easier to do away with the administrative aspect and get to the core of it. And that's part of what's happening. This specific technology, this QR code to your bank account, I don't know. I don't know what impact it's going to have. And it may be nominal at best. It may end up being that very few people actually sign up for it.
Josh, is it a downside that we haven't done all the studies that Alan would do in his dreams before we unroll this to the public?
No, I think the downside would be to go with foregone conclusions, either not introduce continued technological advancement in this forum or any other until we get to that nirvana of having, ultimate understanding. This is an iterative process. Vegas has been built on reinvention, and this is just the current evolution of it in the payment customer experience space. I think with measured sort of approach, we should continue and measure the heck out of it and understand it and pivot as necessary. There's so many other reasons beyond just the customer experience and responsible gambling aspects or problem gambling aspects that we haven't talked about yet, like suspicious activity identification from a criminal standpoint, anti-money laundering type concerns. Data always wins. And when you have an experience like this that can be enhanced with additional data to understand individual customers' behavior, whether that's to elicit additional behavior or to identify problem behavior, that always ends up in a better place than before said data was introduced.
I can imagine the possibility that, just like many, many years ago, well, some people do it still, you would take envelopes and you'd put the money for groceries in one and the money for entertainment in another and the money for rent in another, and you segregated it so as to help you budget. I suspect that that's already happening, but I certainly see a path to where folks do that with their accounts. They mark their accounts for what they are. And if this is your entertainment,
it's like the old joke.
That.
It's like the old joke with the punchline is, "Oh, I got gambling money." If you know that joke,
yeah.
It's somebody is like begging someone on the street for money for an operation, and they go, "How do I know you're not going to go in and gamble?" It's like, "Oh no, it's fine. I got gambling money. I just need the money for the operation." But yeah. Let me get to the ultimate question then. I mean, do you think there will come a time when actual paper money is a relic in a casino?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Straight up. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. No, I mean, are we rapidly heading that way?
Well, Josh, am I wrong about that?
No, I mean, I think you'll see it become much more predominant than it is today. I mean, it's not very predominant at all today. So yes, will it go away completely? I don't see that happening in a long, long time, because I think people look at the gaming industry differently than, retail or other forms of entertainment, and the notion of currency and chips and things like that. I do think that there is a bit of mystique to that, and that is part of the experience. So I think for a certain subset, paper money still exists. People probably said the same thing about quarters, to bring it full circle, 30 years ago when we were talking about this, and really you don't see any of those coin-operated machines anymore. So perhaps I'm wrong, but I do think that paper money persists in some way, shape, or form for a very long time. I see it becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, though, to Alan's point.
Yeah, I mean, as you look around the world, David, you'll find countries whose cash utilization has dropped very dramatically in the last couple of decades, in some cases almost to zero. And I think that that's kind of an international trend. Now, having said that, I've spent a lot of time in Japan, where you hand someone a credit card and they don't know what to do with it. They're just a very cash-dominated society. So to Josh's point, it's not going to, we're not going to be able to put a date on this, but that's the trend line. The trend line is moving toward no cash being used.
And of course, all the studies that need to be done need to be funded. And they need to be funded
in cash.
Yeah. And I'm guessing over at UNLV, you'll take any form, right? Whether it's credit card, cash, or a QR code. Let's put it right on the side of the building.
I would love to do that. I would love to make giving to UNLV frictionless. That may take longer than it will to get cash out of casinos.
Well, I think you know my position. I think these studies are really super important. I think the social costs of gambling, especially problem gambling, are under-discussed in our community. And I'm hoping that as these innovations come forward, those conversations will also come forward. I appreciate that both of you gentlemen are in those conversations. Alan Feldman and Josh Swishman, thank you so much for joining us today on CityCast Las Vegas.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, you could go tell a friend. You could rate the show. It's just a couple of beep, boop, boops. Leave us a review, too, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. Don't forget, you can support this show and get some great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky.